This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
He's Greg, I'm Nick. Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles. And Greg, before we get into the Patriots, little Celtics Minute here. Your thoughts on them advancing to the NBA Finals, which will start tomorrow night, about 90 minutes down the road from me in San Francisco. Warriors, Celtics. What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, first of all, tremendous run by the Celtics to this point. Just an amazing season to go from where they were, 23 and 24, whatever they were just floundering, didn't know whether this current mix of players could work, and everybody can blah after the fact. But, those were legitimate concerns to bring up at the time. Look at it now. This team has caught fire for half the year, is now in the NBA Finals, is in many corners favored to win the NBA championship, and this team was under 500. Obviously, there was something wrong with this team at this point, and I give a lot of credit, as everybody knows from listening to this podcast, I'm sort of a coaching, coaching guru, so to speak, in terms of I love to watch coaches work and what they do, and I'm a youth coach myself, high school coach, and it's always been something that's been something I love to observe is coaches, how they go about their business, how they get the most out of their teams, and the job that Ime Udoka has done this year has been unbelievable. He basically took the baton where Brad Stevens couldn't get any further. Yes, the team had to take a couple of steps back, which often happens with new coaches. But I think that he reminds me of Bruce Cassidy in a lot of ways, where and also Belichick, I would say, and Cora. I would say all of our coaches now in Boston, they all are tough on the players. They'll call them out, they'll hold them accountable. Sometimes just behind closed doors, which is fine. Sometimes, out in public. But I think that accountability and coming from a guy like Ime with his background, his playing background, I think has been a huge difference this year. So as far as the Celtics' chances in the finals, look, I'll leave that up to you guys who watch a lot more NBA basketball. I don't know if I've watched the Warriors very much this year outside of maybe a little bit against the Celtics in the regular season. All I know is this. The Patriots, the Celtics, in the three teams that they faced so far, those teams couldn't shoot a lick. I know the Warriors can shoot. So, to me, it feels like it's going to be a tough chore for them having to go on the road, even though they've been a great road team. But against a team with, assassins from the outside like this team has, I think it's an entirely different challenge for the Celtics team.
Well, as you know, this is kind of my wheelhouse, right?
Hell yeah.
I feel like I can talk all four, but the Celtics are my wheelhouse. So a couple of things. Yes, Ime on accountability. I was all over him early when it didn't look good because he was just killing the guys publicly, and it didn't look like they were responding to it. But the switch, literally the switch was flipped. And it was everybody will go back to that Knicks game, the dramatic R.J. Barrett shot off the glass over Tatum as kind of the moment they woke up. So, look, this is a very unpredictable run, and that's what makes it so fun. I think Tatum and Brown have answered a lot of questions. Oh, can they lead together? Are they the right two guys? That stuff was garbage, honestly. I think they fit together, and I think Jaylen Brown has, subjugated his ego to be the number two guy because he knows Tatum is the dude. To look back at early in the season, I think that's really where they transformed. And, of course, Smart has just been terrific defensive player of the year. And I think people, including a lot of people in the media, might have overlooked the tough year that Marcus had last year. He lost several people close to him. He was not in the greatest of shape. He took a step back defensively. It looks like during the offseason he got himself in the right shape, mind, physically as well. So, he's been really good. A couple things about this series. Number one, the Celtics need Robert Williams to be healthy. If he's healthy, he allows them to do what they want to do defensively, which is just switch nonstop and allow Williams to be that rover to contest threes. He's kind of the backline defense, but he's also the line of defense up top. If somebody misses an assignment, we saw him against the Heat when he was healthier. blocking shots from 4 or 5 feet away. He's literally one of only 2 or 3 guys that can do that in the league. So he is a game changer. He's an impact guy. Game 7, he wasn't healthy. Will the long layoff help him? And then the days in between help him? I hope so. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is, Golden State, what's fascinating about this matchup is neither team has really faced a team like they're going to face in the finals during this run. The Celtics have not faced a Warriors offense that is constant ball movement and man movement. It never stops. They're 100 miles per hour, 48 minutes. And the Celtics are going to have to defend that consistently and make sure that they've got their heads on a swivel for back cuts and all that kind of stuff. But the Warriors have not faced the Celtics team. The Celtics are much more physical. They're bigger. They're more athletic. When you look at the Mavericks series, I watched every game of that series. Maxi Kleber down low for Dallas. He's not a rim protector. He's not a big guy. When you look at a Horford or a Robert Williams, even a Daniel Tice, who might play some minutes in this series, when you look at what the Warriors have done and who they've done it against, they have not been able to, go against that kind of physicality for 48 minutes night in and night out. And that's what the Celtics have done. I mean, the one thing you can say about this run for the season, the postseason, is just the physicality of it. Even against the Nets, a little less, but, there was some physicality early on, but it kind of waned after game 2. Kyrie checked out. That series was over, for all intents and purposes. But these back-to-back 7-game series, Milwaukee, and then you had to go against that Miami team. Those are 2 teams that will punch you in the mouth, and they will make you earn it. And the fact that the C's won both of those series in a game 7, when you look at how they did it, they went to Milwaukee, win game 6, then win game 7 in dominating fashion. Then they have that awful game 6 against the Heat. They've got to go down to Miami for game 7. And they really, until the final couple minutes, dominated that game. They did not, they did not trail once in that basketball game on Sunday. So I think there's a lot of interesting facets to this series for, a basketball hardcore kind of guy like me. And I think it should go 6 or 7, and it should be tightly contested. The one final thing I'll say before we jump into the Patriots, Greg, that concerns me about this series, the lulls. And even when the Celtics win games, even when they've been dominant, we saw it on Sunday, they tend to just kind of stall out offensively. And the ball sticks a little bit. They wait until 6-7 seconds left on the shot clock to actually get into their sets. They walk the ball up. If they do that against the Warriors, if they get some stops, and don't overlook, Golden State's defense, they're one of the top 5 defenses in basketball this year. If the Warriors come up with some stops and the Celtics go into one of those lulls, what might have been an 8-0 run for Miami or a 10-2 run for Miami can quickly become 16-2 for the Warriors. And all of a sudden, you see that burst. So those lulls concern me. If the Celtics can get rid of those and have them less often, they have a legitimate shot to win this series. But it should be interesting.
Nick, one thing on that and related to that, and I think we talked about it last week, and it's reared its ugly head a little bit with this team. I think this is the ultimate referendum on how are the Celtics going to deal with success. Anybody can overcome adversity. How do you deal with success? And I think there are legitimate questions about if these guys are just too young at this point to deal with this. How good are they going to feel about themselves, about winning the Eastern Conference and just being in the finals? I have no problem with them celebrating a lot and enjoying it the other night. They should have. It was a very tough road what they had to do to get to the NBA Finals. But they need to be able to put that in the back burner, and just, you have to realize it's 0-0 now. Nobody cares about how you got here at this point. It's what you do from this point on. So stop feeling good about yourself. Stop patting yourself on the back and worry about what are we going to do to win this next game.
Yeah, and I thought Ime did a good job in the locker room after the game.
He did.
He said, no, I don't need the water celebration. And Tatum said, F that. And they still did it anyway. But I did like Ime's message. And he said, we don't hang banners in Boston for Eastern Conference championships. And he told them, we've got to be able to enjoy this for a couple of hours, but we got to get back on that plane. We're flying across the country in the next couple of days. We've got to quickly adjust and realize that this is the NBA Finals and we have a chance to do something special. One last note I would say, it's going to be compelling to watch how much does Jordan Poole play for Golden State? He's been fantastic offensively for them for the last couple of months. He is a black hole defensively. And with Brown and Tatum, I do wonder, defensively, the Warriors, they'll do some switching and they'll play some zone, get ready for a good amount of zone. They played zone against Dallas late in that series. I think they'll throw a good amount of zone at the Celtics offense to challenge them. But if they continuously attack Jordan Poole, you have Poole and Curry's been a little bit better defensively, but he still has those size limitations against bigger, physical athletes. It's a tough assignment. Klay Thompson is not the same guy he was 3 or 4 years ago. He's still pretty damn good, but he has the wear and tear. He's not the same guy. So, they have this PTSD lineup, as they call it, for Golden State, which is, what is it? Poole, Thompson, Steph, and Draymond, the PTSD lineup. If you're going to play that, the Celtics have some advantages. So the Warriors have to figure that out defensively. Again, I think it should be a very good series. Let's get into the Patriots now. Hopefully you enjoyed the Celtics. We say minute, but it was actually probably about 10 minutes. Hopefully y'all enjoyed that, though. Let's jump into the Patriots. They got together on Tuesday. Yesterday, the media was there. From what I read and from what I've heard, Greg, not a ton happening yesterday. What'd you see?
No, it was to me, it was by far the most, in terms of what I need to do, the most unproductive Patriots practice I think I've ever attended outside of like, those walkthroughs after preseason games or something like that. A couple where they're, going over corrections and things like that. And they kind of, just sort of walk around and jog around. It was like that. And for them to do that, the second week at OTAs, I've never seen that before. Then again, Belichick switched up the schedule on us this time around. So originally we were supposed to see the third day of there's 3-day groupings of these OTA practices. Originally we were supposed to see the third day of all of them, which is normally a pretty good day. Normally they get after it. It's the last practice of the week, and then the guys go away for a long weekend. So that's normally pretty good. Bill switched it to the first day, both of the first 2 OTAs. And so that's normally a let's get our legs under us type of thing. And that's what it looked like the other day. It was much less competitive than the first day. I don't know if it was Belichick reacting to those guys saw too much the first practice. So we're not giving them anything this week, and we just won't do anything on Tuesday, and we'll do everything on Wednesday and Thursday. I don't know. It's possible. I do think that the good news for me and the good news for our listeners and our readers at BSJ is that after today and tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, then 4 out of the final 5 practices for this team are open to the media. Nice. So there's no if Belichick was trying to hide things from us, which is his prerogative, he's following the rules. He can do whatever he wants. He can't do that from now on. I mean, he's going to have the mandatory mini camp for 3 days. Then we're going to get access to another OTA, and then they'll be off for the summer. So it's getting to be crunch time here coming up. So not a whole lot to glean from the team as opposed to last week, but we'll do our best to give you some nuggets here and there.
There were a number of guys who weren't there yesterday, but I want to start with 2 of them, 2 of the biggest dudes on this football team. Isaiah Wynn and Trent Brown not there. And we've talked about the offensive line during the offseason, Greg, and the fact that, they went into the draft and, they drafted a couple of guys really late in the 6th round or so. How much concern do you have? First, I guess let's start with Trent Brown, because we want to dig in deeper with Wynn. Yep. Any word on why Brown wasn't there? Is there a personal issue? Any idea as to why he wasn't on the field?
No, but knowing Trent Brown's history, it was a holiday weekend and he probably decided to take an extra day. But I will caution people, which is his prerogative. He's a veteran. It's not mandatory. It's optional. I will also point out that due to what's going on in this country right now, in terms of the airlines and things like that, there's been a lot of cancellations around the league. I've heard there's been a lot of teams that had OTAs this week that said attendance for some guys has been an issue due to flight cancellations. So that's always possible for some of these guys. It didn't used to be an excuse for Bill Belichick of the Patriots, but we know Bill's a little bit more chill right now. But, Trent Brown being there, nothing I'm going to overreact to because he's always been, how do I term this? I don't know, an interesting player in terms of his attendance and commitment level at various places. And that includes here at the end of last season where there were questions about his commitment to the team. And so him missing a day, or a couple, not a big deal to me. I think you kind of know what you're going to get with Trent Brown, and they also have the built-in weight clauses this year. So if he doesn't want to work here, he better be working at home or else he's not getting his money.
All right, Isaiah Wynn, the other guy. Is it time to kind of look at this situation and start calling teams and seeing if there's anybody out there that would be interested in Isaiah Wynn?
I think it is. And here's a few of my reasons. And look, we don't know. Number one, we don't know why Isaiah Wynn's not here. It could be a personal issue. If that's the case, understandable. And we'll probably take a large portion of this back. But the only thing I can do at this point is read the tea leaves. And the number one tea leaf and tip off for me that this is not just, a personal thing is that at the first OTA, Trent Brown was at left tackle.
Right.
Okay. If the Patriots were cool with Isaiah Wynn, hey, he's just missing it because of birth of a kid or a sick relative or something like that, and the Patriots were like, we're good with Isaiah Wynn as our left tackle, then you would have just had Trent Brown at right tackle, getting his work in at right tackle, and have somebody else at left tackle filling in. That wasn't the case. Trent Brown, after last year, never, ever practicing at left tackle, maybe outside of a snap or two, never practiced at left tackle last year. All of a sudden this year, the first OTA practice, he's a left tackle when Isaiah Wynn's not there. To me, that tells me that the Patriots are not sold on Wynn, that they have questions, that they at least want to look at what does Trent Brown at left tackle at this stage in his career look like. Is it viable for us if we decide to go in that direction or not? I don't know the final results. Puzzle piece number 2, Mike Reese wrote about this in his notes this weekend. He wrote about Isaiah Wynn, and in the Mike's way, which is much nicer than anybody else on the beat. He basically asked the question: is the team looking to move on from Isaiah Wynn? He doesn't come out and say that. Mike Reese did say that Isaiah Wynn missed OTA practices last week. That means he missed all of them. And Mike Reese would know, and he would hint at that if that was true. And so you put that together with the third piece, him not being there yesterday on Tuesday. I think there's an issue here. And I think in my mind, and we sort of touched on it last week, but what people have to remember is in April of May, a year ago, okay, so what happens with these first-round picks is the teams have to make a decision on the guaranteed fifth-year option a year out.
Yep.
So in May, about a year ago, before OTA started, before anything started in the offseason last year, the Patriots had to make a decision on Isaiah Wynn's 2022 contract. Okay? And so at the time, the Patriots didn't know any different. They were like, okay, well, Isaiah Wynn's had some injury issues, but we think that's unlucky. We think he's a good player. And at $10 million for a fifth year for a left tackle, that's sort of middle of the road. That about fits with his play. He's been about middle of the road left tackle when he's been out there. So we're going to pick up the option. But really what that does is it puts the teams in an unfair position. Too bad, because they have the advantage of almost everything on the contract front. But this is one of the few times they're at a disadvantage. So they make the decision last year on Isaiah Wynn, and they're basically now held hostage for 2 years. Okay, because you've already guaranteed his contract for 2022. Yeah, you could trade him or something like that. That's always possible. But put yourself in the Patriots position. You're like, okay, they pick up his option. So he's the left tackle that year. All right, he misses some stuff. Okay, well, fine. We haven't seen this out of him before. We're sure he's going to be okay. He's going to report, in shape, things like that. He'll have a good year this year. All of a sudden, Isaiah Wynn, after having his fifth-year option picked up, doesn't show up to much last year at all. And then he comes back. He comes to training camp. He's out of shape. They're not real happy with him. First half of the year, he was not good. And all of a sudden, now they're unhappy with him. He finishes better at the end of the season, but they're already on the hook. They can't get rid of him. They're already on the hook for 2022. And you figure, Isaiah Wynn's going to learn from 2021. Now we're back in the same place. So now the Patriots at least have options, but the only option, they can't cut him because they're on the hook for the $10 million. If they trade him, they get the $10 million back in cap space, which they need because they're up against it right now. But I think that in my mind, if Trent Brown looked okay at left tackle, if he gives you average play, which is what Isaiah Wynn is, I'm trading Isaiah Wynn. I'm moving Trent Brown to left tackle. I'm figuring out right tackle.
Two things about Wynn. First of all, it's concerning because of what happened last year. He didn't show up motivated this year. Like that has to bother you, right? You went through it. You documented it. Not a great start for him last year. Not a great offseason. Not a great camp season. Yada yada. And here we are at OTAs, and he's not around. Again, if there's a personal reason that we don't know, you already gave the disclaimer. I'll give the disclaimer on my end. If there's something going on personally, it's his business. Hope all is well, and this will get removed. This narrative will be ended. But looking at it from the outside, looking in, again, this is a guy who did not perform last year up to his level, and he doesn't show up at OTAs. The first chance to show the team and everybody else that he's taking this seriously, he's not around. Secondly, it seems to be catching Bill Belichick off guard slightly. And the reason why I say that, I do wonder, hindsight's 2020, right? Wednesday morning quarterbacking we're doing here on the podcast. But I do wonder, like, if you go back in time, would the Patriots have handled certain things differently? Would Ted Karras still be here? Would they have been more willing to fork over an extra couple of $1 million to keep Steady Teddy here? Because you might have to move other guys to those tackle spots. Would you go back and maybe draft a tackle earlier than you did in this last draft in April because, you weren't sure? So the other troubling point, other than just the fact that Wynn should have been motivated and should have had a chip on his shoulder and he seemingly reacted in the opposite direction, is the fact that this seems to have caught Bill Belichick off guard. And was the team ready for Isaiah Wynn to do this to them? It doesn't seem like they were. And so now an offensive line that we already had questions to begin with, now you look at it and say, well, even more questions. Does Trent Brown slide to left tackle? Does he, do you move Haran to left tackle? Now you have to maybe hope and cross your fingers that Stuber can be some kind of depth piece almost right away versus developing him over the next year. You've got to hope that maybe Hines is ready to kind of step in if you need him. So it puts the pressure on every other offensive lineman. David Andrews is not out there right now. He's missed some of the OTAs, if not all of them. So, there are questions about this O-line, and we had them before the draft, and I think we have even more of them right now, which is not where you want to be with this football team. And, of course, you look back, Greg, at that 2018 draft, you had 2 first-round picks, and right now that draft doesn't look so good.
No, you could have. They've already traded Sony Michel. Could very well trade Isaiah Wynn. And, Sony Michel certainly, a good solid. You'd say that about both of them. Good, solid players. First-round picks? No, probably not. I mean, they could have had, we've talked about it before, could have had Darius Leonard, could have had Nick Chubb, could have had DJ Moore. Can you just imagine this team with, Darius Leonard at linebacker out of that draft? Nick Chubb, could have been your feature running back if you wanted that. Mark Andrews, the tight end in Baltimore, went in the 3rd round in that draft. it just reminds me a lot of the 2015 Bruins draft where they had those 3 first-round picks, and it's sort of like, you get those multiple first-round picks, you're banking on this has got to be the baseline, the base of our future for this team, and both teams just were not effective enough with those picks, and they're both paying the price right now.
All right, so let's get back to some of these guys that were not there yesterday. James White was not really around. Your thoughts on James? Obviously he's got the hip, and he was out there last week doing some stuff, and people were happy to see that. But now you're back here again, and he wasn't necessarily around. So your thoughts on the James White deal?
Yeah, I think that it's tough to tell. He's been a veteran for so long that I don't worry about those guys. I came out with my first 53-man roster, which we'll talk about in question of the day. And I had James White on the team, which I don't know. I'm just guessing at this point.
Right.
But a lot of people wanted to be like, oh, well, he can be on PUP or this. I don't know. He was out there. He did some drills the first day. So to me, that sounds like he's cleared. They're just slowly bringing him along. But I think he's been cleared to play. So I don't think that James White can end up on, PUP to start training camp or anything like that. I could be wrong. I wasn't exactly watching the running backs a lot that first practice, but I could have sworn that James White was doing some things, which leads me to believe that he has been cleared by the medical staff.
Judon not around, no big deal, just a veteran thing?
Yeah, it's you don't love it, especially the way that he finished last year, and he talked about wanting to be in better shape and finish stronger and that sort of thing at the end of last year, and he admitted his part in the downturn of his production. Again, another guy who's been in the league for a long time, so you don't hate it, but we'll be watching those guys very closely when it comes to mandatory minicamps, these veterans, to see what kind of shape they're in. I'm the type of guy who likes everybody there, but it is what it is.
Any other guys missing that you took note of and are interested in their absence?
Well, yeah, Devon Godchow not there. Considering his season last year and what he has at stake and what he has at stake for this team, because they need him to be a really good guy. Again, Nick, you just talked about, and we talked about in the lead up to the draft, got to get a tackle because you don't know what the options are at tackle. Like a good tackle that could play right away if needed, because of Isaiah Wynn, 5th year, Trent Brown, his weight issues and his injury issues. Do they draft a tackle up high? No, they take Andrew Stuber, who a lot of people don't think can play in this league. I don't know. Maybe he can. I liked his film a little bit. But also the same thing with nose tackle that we said, you got to get a nose tackle because Devon Godchow right now is your only nose tackle on the roster. And if that doesn't work out, how the hell are you going to stop the run? And, here we are. Godchow is not at the second OTA, which, they're out there with Carl Davis and Daniel Ekuale. And, that's pretty much it, what they have, on the inside. Lawrence Guy was back, which was good to see. But another, I would say left tackle, we're back in the same spot, Nick. Left tackle and nose tackle are still like two of our biggest worries about this team. And 2 OTA sessions into it, we're still here.
Yeah, my binky Akeem Hicks, of course, signs with the Buccaneers weekend. Which
it's okay, Nick. It's okay. You want to hug?
Made me very angry. Of course, it was the Buck. All right, so a couple of questions about some other guys. Josh Uche, follow up to last week. There was a lot of talk about Uche. A lot of people were excited about Uche. Are you still there, or are people coming down from that high last week?
Well, a couple things on that. This was abbreviated, this practice, so it was hard to tell exactly what he was doing. He did not play on the inside in this practice. He was on the outside. He was playing basically Matt Judon's spot. I did ask the very media-friendly Bill Belichick about Josh Uche in his press conference.
Yes.
Which is always fun. I'm just looking for the question and answer. I asked him, I said, Josh Uche played a ton. Hasn't played a ton in his first couple of years here. Steve Belichick called him a big piece of the puzzle for this defense. And last week we saw him line up inside, outside. Is that because you're trying to figure out where he's best? Or do you think, despite not playing a lot to this point, he's capable of wearing multiple hats for you guys on defense? And he said, well, we'll see how it goes. I agree. I think he is a big piece of our defense. We'll see exactly what he turns out to be. So Bill saying that he's a big puzzle piece, backing up Steve, that was interesting. I do think that the puzzle piece is the key words for Josh Uche, because I don't think that they know where he's ultimately going to play and what he's going to do. And then I followed up and I said, do you think he has that inside-outside versatility similar to what we've seen out of Dante Hightower in the past year? I'm not comparing him to Dante Hightower. I'm just saying, do you think he has those traits? That could he do something similar? And Bill says, it's a stretch to compare almost anybody to Hightower. You're talking about one of the best linebackers that's ever played here, you idiot. So, I mean, like, everybody knows I'm not comparing Josh Uche to Dante Hightower. Like, I'm not. And I would never do that in a million years. But just, could he be a mini junior training wheels version of Dante Hightower, being inside on early downs, outside on later downs, which I think that's what it looks like they're doing. But, of course, Bill just wanted to throw a loogie at me. So thank you, Bill. I'll have another.
You heard it here first. Greg Bedard thinks Josh Uche, the next Dante Hightower. Nelson Aguilar. Where's he fitting in right now with the upper echelon of the wide receiver class?
That's a good question. I did not watch him very much in this practice, so maybe somebody else reported something. But I thought I think he's been out there a lot. I know the first practice, he was out there a lot with the starters, and it's Devontae Parker and Nelson Aguilar a lot, and then they sort of filter things around. But it was tough to tell in this practice. There wasn't a whole lot that they were doing, and it was mostly run focused when they were looking at things.
All right, 3 rapid fire for you. New linebacker combinations. What are you seeing? What are you thinking?
So I thought that was a little bit interesting because, like we said, we did have Josh Uche there last time. So this time they basically went 2 deep, and it was Juwan Bentley and Jelani Tavai on the inside, which was interesting. And then it was Mac Wilson and Harvey Lange. No Cam McGrone, and I watched Cam McGrone a little bit more in this practice. No brace on a guy this will be a second year back from ACL surgery. No brace, and I thought he looked a little gimpy, a little tired in the conditioning runs that they were doing. He was kind of lagging behind, a little bit of a limp, so that's a little bit of a concern with me. But I thought it was it's interesting that we haven't really seen a Bentley-Mac Wilson pairing yet up front, but still early.
Marcus Jones at safety, not cornerback.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. He was with the safeties in the grouping. Again, not totally surprising if you listen to the podcast with myself and Greg Cosell, because Cosell said that he sees him as a honey badger type player, which I agree with. And I had the same sort of evaluation as Marcus Jones, that I see him more as you want to play him in space and, use that quickness and his ball abilities to make plays on the ball. And so I think that's interesting. And, Jack Jones was with the cornerbacks, but he took a step back this week. It was Juwan Williams was on the outside with the second group. Yeah. So it was, the first group was unchanged. It was Malcolm Butler and Terrence Mitchell on the outside, Jonathan Jones on the inside. The second group was Juwan Williams for Jack Jones, Jalen Mills on the other side, and Miles Bryant was the slot cornerback.
Interesting where Mills is going to fit in. A lot of people thought he was absolutely going to start on the outside. He might still do that, but maybe not. Bill said he's adjusted value due to the lack of special teams. Greg, you are not buying this.
No. What's he smoking? No, he said that, he was asked about sort of like his profiles, and, Daniel Jeremiah had put out there, hey, Cleveland Browns, this is what we're looking for at every position. Bill says they evaluate it every year, even though they've stayed pretty true, but he was asked about, have they changed the way they look at special teams, and like, receivers, kick returners. He said definitely they have adjusted that because they don't get many kicks. But he also said in terms of, special teams that it's gone down. And anybody who sees his roster construction and that there are still guys like, Matthew Slater and Cody Davis and Justin Bethel and stuff like that. So, I think that Bill still values that very much, sees value in terms of, I think he values special teams in setting the toughness for a team. And I think there's some legitimacy about that. I'd just like to see him strike a better balance.
All right, time for the BostonSportsJournal.com member question of the day. $39.99 over at BSJ annual plan. Not only do you get top-notch analysis of all the Boston pro sports, which, by the way, 2 more things about the Celtics. If I don't say it, I'll regret it. Defensive rebounding, they have to keep Looney and Wiggins off of the offensive glass. That'll be huge. And also, both of these teams turn the basketball over a ton. And the Celtics, you can look at the numbers. They lose when they turn the ball over 16 or more times. It's pretty much a guarantee, especially against this Warriors kind of running gun offense and how quickly they can put points up. Defensive rebounding and turnovers are going to be gigantic. Just wanted to get that out there. Back to BSJ. If you're a Pats junkie, if you're listening to this podcast, of course you are. Membership at BSJ gives you access to a ton of video analysis that Greg does on the coaches' film and direct access to him in weekly chats. Greg, the member question of the day, I know you kind of teased this. It's about the 53. What is the question? Who is it from? And what is your answer, sir?
It's a straw man question that I'm inventing myself, but I've done this the past couple of weeks. I forget what I wrote about on Sunday because we talk on Wednesday, and I'm like, oh, we should have talked about that. So, in case anyone's listening, I have my first 53-man roster projection. Obviously, way too early, and injuries are going to be part of the deal. But if you want to go over to BSJ, you can see the whole thing. A couple of things that will probably jump out that I just wanted to explain a little bit. I have Damien Harris being traded.
Ooh.
Yeah, and look, as opposed to, say, Chase Winovich, I don't want to trade Damien Harris, and I would rather not. And running back's one of those positions where you get a lot of injuries, so anything can happen. So I think that, in my mind, if the big thing is Kevin Harris, the rookie Kevin Harris. Does he show that he's ready? Like, is he like Ramondre Stevenson last year, where the team very early could say, we got something here. This kid's capable of X, Y, and Z. We can get rid of, somebody else if we need to, because he's ready to be a solid backup as a rookie. Can Kevin Harris do that? I don't know. I'm projecting that, yes, he does. And by the way, I nicknamed him Quadzilla in my first OTA report. The dude's legs are freaking huge, Nick. And also, is James White healthy and ready to be sort of the veteran in the room, that he's there, that he's the third down back? I think both those things need to be true for the team to be able to say, we're going to trade Damien Harris. But look, Ramondre Stevenson was a burgeoning star at the end of last year that you could make an argument the second half of the year he was the best running back on this team, even though I love Damien Harris and I think he's a good player. He's going into his contract year. A, are you going to be able to sign him to a contract extension? B, are you going to franchise tag him? I would say the answers to both are no. So are you just going to go with the comp pick, or are you going to try to get something for him at some point? And maybe this is a decision you make maybe closer to the trade deadline, where a team needs a running back and what have you. But so that was one of the more controversial things on my list. A couple other competitions in my mind for roster spots. I think it's Henry Anderson and Byron Cowart for the last defensive line spot. I think it's Yadni Kajust and Andrew Stuber for the last offensive tackle spot. And here's one other thought that I had in doing this. I do not think Malcolm Butler's spot on this team is assured. I think it's going to be, you only keep so many. I mean, what was it last year? Last year, the team only kept 5 cornerbacks, and that includes J.C. Jackson. Right now, you already drafted 2. So right now I have 6 on the roster, and that includes Malcolm Butler, Jonathan Jones, Terrence Mitchell, Jalen Mills, Marcus Jones, and Jack Jones. What do you do with Shaun Wade? If you keep Shaun Wade, you're not keeping a 7th cornerback. That's not happening. So who goes? Is it Jalen Mills? Is it Malcolm Butler? Is it Terrence Mitchell? So those are some of the key questions that I address in my 53-man roster projection. If people want to see it and dive into it, we update this. Well, I'll probably update it after the mandatory minicamp, after sort of the offseason. I'll have another version, and then we'll be going into training camp.
My pick would be Joanne Williams. Just get him out of here. Yeah, he hasn't.
He's definitely gone. He's definitely off the roster.
He's gonna go. He's Greg. I'm Nick. Go Celtics. We'll talk to you next week.